Have you ever wondered what would happen if you completely bypassed the modern dating scene, like just opted out entirely, and directly asked God who you should marry? Well, welcome to today's Explainer. We're looking at a strikingly supernatural testimony that pretty much challenges everything modern culture tells us about romance, dating, and finding a spouse. The source material we're unpacking is centered strictly on divine revelations, prophetic dreams, and some really intense spiritual warfare. We're going to look at one woman's incredibly detailed account of avoiding a demonic trap and finding her husband by relying entirely on literal, divine instructions, basically tuning into everything the Lord said to her.
Okay, let's dive into this. The source material presents a genuinely fascinating narrative where our earthly relationships are directly influenced by spiritual forces. The speaker in our text insists that the choices we make in romance aren't just about compatibility, they're actual battles for our spiritual destiny. Throughout this explainer, we'll explore the specific revelations detailed in this testimony regarding complete physical purity, the hidden dangers of casual dating, and a highly specific supernatural vetting process for marriage based on everything the Lord said.
So that brings us to phase 1, a warning from Gabriel.
To understand this super strict approach to relationships, the text points us to a profound, supernatural encounter experienced by the speaker's sister, Zipporah. According to the account, Zipporah received a nighttime visitation from none other than the angel Gabriel. The text describes that during this visitation, Zipporah's spirit actually stepped out of her body and Gabriel guided her over to her bedroom window. On the window pane, names began to mysteriously appear. Gabriel explained that these names represented real children of God, people who were genuinely following the Father's will. But the vision quickly turned dark. Zipporah watched in absolute shock as the lives of these faithful Christians played out, showing many of them suddenly and rapidly backsliding into severe sin, specifically sexual immorality.
When Zipporah asked how these really strong believers could fall so quickly, Gabriel revealed a whole second layer of names hiding beneath the first. These, he explained, were the names of their boyfriends and girlfriends. In this vision, the angel delivered a stark message. Casual relationships with the opposite sex without the immediate view of marriage simply do not please the Lord. The text quotes Gabriel as saying, all these are just Satan's traps to trap people into sexual immorality. The source is crystal clear here. The divine message delivered through this angel points to the idea that just having a boyfriend or girlfriend is fundamentally a spiritual snare.
Which takes us right into phase 2, Satan's trap of dating. Building on that intense angelic warning, the source material sets up a really stark comparison. On one side, you have the world's way. The speaker notes that young people feel immense pressure to start dating in high school, treating it like it's just this necessary passage of life. She attributes the societal pressure directly to the Prince of Darkness, arguing that the world's rules are governed by Satan to induce sin. On the flip side is God's will, which according to everything the Lord said to her regarding relationships requires actively waiting on God and maintaining complete physical purity. And I mean complete, not even a kiss before marriage.
And to challenge that worldly argument that people need to date to, practice for a future marriage, the speaker poses a pretty fascinating rhetorical question. Where did Adam practice being a good partner before he married Eve? The source uses this biblical precedent to argue that God instituted marriage, and if he brings you the partner he has appointed, absolutely no ungodly practice runs are required. It's a completely different paradigm.
And that leads us to phase 3, revealing the demonic suitor.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how this theology of strict purity was actually put to a massive test in the speaker's own life. Looking at the timeline here, back in 2011, before the speaker was even fully committed to her faith, a close friend of her older brother began pursuing her. Despite her clear rejections, this guy persistently pressured her for 5 whole years, right up until she finally got married in 2016. For years, she just thought of him as, well, an annoying family friend. But in late 2015, a new revelation completely changed the narrative.
Late 2015 brings a downright terrifying dream. The speaker saw herself sleeping in bed when suddenly a demonic spirit came flying at her at top speed. As it approached, she recognized the face of this persistent suitor. The source states that this spirit repeatedly tried to dive into her body to possess her, but God's protection caused it to fall to the side each and every time.
This dream was a direct revelation. The Lord showed her that this man wasn't just some misguided admirer. The text actually refers to him as a Nephilim, a literal demonic agent. The speaker realized that the enemy had seen God's calling on her life from a very young age and dispatched this man specifically to marry her. Why? Well, as the quote powerfully states, he was sent by Satan in order to destroy God's call on my life.
The source warns that the devil will deliberately send the wrong spouse to completely derail a believer's spiritual destiny before it even begins.
Now for Phase 4, the marriage radar vision.
Terrified by the revelation of this demonic suitor, the speaker realized the stakes of marriage were literally heaven or hell. She began praying intensely, begging God to help her visually recognize the exact right person so she wouldn't accidentally fall right into the enemy's trap. In response, the text describes a vision where the Lord showed her a spiritual machine. Imagine a divine radar or a scanner. The rules were simple but absolute. When a prospective spouse stepped into the machine, the light would flash. If it turned green, it was the right person. If it flashed red, it was the wrong person.
So we see this build into a very strict vetting process. In her vision, the speaker watched the demonic suitor walk into the radar, and immediately the machine aggressively flashed red. Jesus was issuing a definitive no. The text mentions that 2 other potential candidates also walked through the machine, and for both of them the light flashed red as well. This radar metaphor represents a zero-compromise approach to finding a spouse. You simply do not move forward unless you receive a definitive green light directly from God.
Which brings us to our final section, Phase 5, seeking divine confirmation.
So how did she actually find that green light? Well, still anxious about making a mistake, the speaker made a very specific private request to God. She prayed that when she met the man God had chosen for her, he would be wearing a red shirt. She didn't want to rely on her own messy feelings or physical attraction at all. She wanted an undeniable physical sign from heaven to act as her ultimate green light.
And this brilliantly illustrates the core methodology taught in the source material. If we break down the text, we get this clear 4-step formula for a godly marriage. Step 1, stay completely single and physically pure. No dating, no practicing. Step 2, wait actively on the Lord, trusting Him as a good father. Step 3, which is absolutely crucial to the speaker, pray for confirmation before you get emotionally entangled. The text warns that once your heart is involved, you kind of lose the ability to hear God clearly. And step 4, make Jesus the absolute center of your life and the eventual relationship.
Following this exact formula led her to a man named Conrad. What's absolutely fascinating about their meeting is how perfectly it aligned with the angel Gabriel's initial warning against boyfriends and girlfriends. When Conrad approached her, he completely bypassed the concept of dating. The speaker notes with a real sense of awe. He wasn't asking me if I could be his girlfriend, he was asking me if I could marry him.
The ultimate confirmation of their union was deeply spiritual. They actually met while she was sharing her testimony at a church. They bonded not over typical romantic dinner dates, but over ministry, prayer mountains, and a shared, intense focus on preaching repentance and eternity. It wasn't until later, when looking back at photos from the very day they met, that she realized Conrad had indeed been wearing a red shirt, the exact sign she had prayed for. Most importantly, before making any commitments at all, Conrad insisted they go to God together to formally ask for His permission, relying entirely on everything the Lord said for their final green light.
The source material we've explored today frames marriage not just as a romantic adventure, but as a high-stakes spiritual assignment. It suggests that the people we allow into our lives are either sent by God to propel our calling forward or sent by the enemy to quench it entirely. Based on the intense warnings and supernatural vetting outlined in this testimony, we leave you with this question to chew on. Are your relationships bringing you closer to your spiritual calling or secretly pulling you away? Thanks for watching this explainer. We'll see you next time.